Welcome back everyone to a video, and today we're doing our week 1 power rankings. Now today are the power rankings. Tomorrow I'll be doing my week 1 picks, and then after that we'll have the AFC West division breakdown, since I kind of put that off for a little too long, so that's my bad, but it is coming out still. For today though, we're doing our power rankings. Now for those of you that don't know much about power rankings, or at least how we're going to be doing it today, it's pretty straightforward. Basically just ranking every single team 1 through 32. We'll be starting at number 32 and going up, and we have it in 4 rows of 8 teams. So the bottom will be the bottom 8 teams, and then the next 8 teams, and then obviously the top 2 rows are the top 16 teams in the NFL. And obviously it's in a random order right here. This isn't actually, I don't have the Cardinals at 1. So just to go ahead and just jump right into it though, at number 32, I do actually have the Patriots. I couldn't find them for a second. The Patriots right there. And I'm going to be honest, I am hopeful for this team. Kind of just in the future, maybe not even this season, but I'm a believer in Drake May. I like what the Patriots have done when drafting guys just like Jalen Polk and Javon Baker to try and bring in some youth and some nice weapons there at wide receiver to help out Drake May in the offense. But as of right now, you have Jacoby Brissett playing behind a pretty bad offensive line. Demario Douglas, there's not a lot to write home about for that offense. Defensively, they're still very solid. I'm very excited to see Christian Gonzalez in year 2. But you trade Matthew Judon, so you're already down a huge leader there. And I don't think there's really enough talent on this roster to really get higher than a bottom 8 team this year. I know it's quite the jump to say that from week 1, but I'm just not sold on the Patriots, at least not yet. I think the future is bright, but I think the future being next year and the year after, when they really start taking some big steps. I think this year there's going to be a lot of growing pains. And so one thing to keep in mind is I'm going to be doing this list literally every single week. After each week, I'm going to move around these teams. So some teams will move up the power rankings if they do well, and teams that do not well are going to move down the power rankings. So it's pretty straightforward. So keep that in mind, because the next team I have up here actually are the Commanders. And obviously number 31 is not where you want to have a team ranked under any circumstances. But for the Commanders, I see this being a team that can really climb the power rankings this year if everything goes correctly. Now, my actual record prediction for them was only 4 wins, because I think they're in a tough division. They have a lot of things to figure out. I'm not very high on them this year, but I will say the potential for them to be good is definitely there. There's just a lot of other teams I'm higher on and I was more confident in. But at the end of the day, Jayden Daniels, I think, is the real deal. I think he's going to be the best quarterback that Washington's had in probably a while. And so I'm just saying, yes, I had them very, very low, literally second to last starting out this year. But I really think if things click a bit earlier than I thought, at least this past offseason, they can really climb the ranks this year. But anyway, as far as the question marks go, since I want to kind of highlight those real quick, just having a rookie quarterback, having a new head coach over there, I think there's a lack of depth at wide receiver, and then you have a lot of new guys on offense, and it's kind of weird how it's going to shake out. And I wasn't really sold in the secondary either. You have Manuel Forbes going to year 2. Hopefully he can step it up. But other than that, a lot of question marks across the roster. So that's why I was just very, very low on them. But Jayden Daniels, I think, is the real deal. Whether he's awesome this year or not, I think you can definitely build around him. I think he'll show a lot of flashes. It's just a matter of how many flashes because of the rest of that roster. But again, if everything can click, they could really surprise people this year. And then at number 30 is going to be the Giants. And I love Malik Nabers. I think everyone's kind of agreed with that sentiment, that Malik Nabers, I think, is the real deal. I'm not sure. I haven't seen anyone that doesn't think he is, just for the record. Maybe you don't, and if you don't, let me know down below why. But I think Nabers is the real deal. But Daniel Jones, I'm so out on. I don't see why he's still on this team. When you paid him all that money, it was one good year. I'm not going to lie, I kind of fell for it. I thought he was going to turn his career around a little bit, and he was kind of coming into his own. I'm completely out on Daniel Jones. I don't think he's the future of this team. And in fact, I think the reason this team is going to struggle is going to be largely because of him. So that's why I had them down so low. Defensively, it's really exciting. You have a really nice D-line with Dexter Lawrence. You trade for Brian Burns. You have Kayvon Thibodeaux going into year 3. You have an exciting secondary with a lot of opportunity. I wouldn't say it's stacked, but there's definitely potential there with like Deonte Banks and Drew Phillips. You draft Tyler Nubin. So you do have talent on this roster, but it's just the lack of wide receiver depth, even running back. I mean, I'm not really sold one way or the other there. And then very, very lackluster at quarterback. That's why the Giants are just so low on here for me. And then next up is going to be the Panthers. This is my personal favorite team. And look, I am very optimistic for the Panthers. I think last year Bryce Young played terrible, and I think that there are a lot of reasons as to why. I think it was bad O-line. I think it was bad play calling. I think it was a lack of separation at wide receiver. But he himself did not play well either. And I think this year, a year under his belt, and I think a nice change of, well, really everything. Basically a new O-line, and there are two key additions being Robert Hunt and Damian Lewis. And then you also, have Dave Canales now in there, head coach. Much different offensive scheme to last year. You have a new receiver in there with Xavier Legette and Deontay Johnson. So there's a lot of changes offensively that give me hope. And then even defensively, it's really not that bad. It was just that the offense would be, 3 and out every time, to where the defense would get tired, and eventually they just couldn't get stops anymore. That led to a lot of the losses. Defense, I think, has a pretty high ceiling for Carolina. So I'm hopeful, but at the end of the day, it's not a great roster, and there is still a huge unknown at quarterback, even though I personally am a believer in Bryce Young. That doesn't ultimately matter. He's very unproven, so I still have them very far down here, but hopefully they can move up at some point. And then right there with them is going to be the Saints, who they actually play week 1. I think both these teams are honestly pretty bad. I'm not going to lie. Maybe I'm a little biased here, but I think Carolina has the higher ceiling than the Saints, because Carolina has a lot of fun pieces that could, really excite this year, like Bryce Young in year 2, Jonathan Brooks, whenever he's healthy at running back, Xavier Legette. And then you go to the Saints, and it's like Chris Olave is incredible. Alvin Kamara is still great. But, Derek Carr is just not the answer for that team. Defensively, you have Corey McKinstry, who you drafted. You have Brian Bresee, I can't remember how you say it, but he's going to year 2. I think he's going to be awesome. So, they have exciting players, but I feel like there's just not enough of it. I think there's a lot of aging guys in this roster at really key positions, especially quarterback. I am so out in Derek Carr. I'm not a believer in him at all. So, I think the Panthers have the higher ceiling. Saints probably have the higher floor. And so, yeah, I have them as a 1 spot difference, but that's all pretty interchangeable for me, to be honest. Then number 27 is the Chargers, and this is a really hard one for me to pin down, to be honest. I had them as high as, I think 24, and I moved them down. Now they're obviously much further down than 24. And at the end of the day, I love Justin Herbert. I think he's a great quarterback. But, and I've said this before in past videos, the lack of talent that he has to work with, it has to cap off this team somewhere. I know Herbert's great, but he can't just lead this group of, I don't want to say nobodies, it's a bit of a harsh term, but of underwhelming weapons. He can't lead them to an 11-win season. It's just not going to happen. I think Ladd McConkey will be great. Josh Palmer is a reliable receiver, but after that, DJ Chark is very, very, very inconsistent. Quentin Johnson had a nightmarish year 1, so maybe he's better in year 2. I don't know, but I'm not betting on that. So it's really rough from there. You have Gus Edwards at running back with, J.K. Dobbins you brought in too. Kamani Vidal, pretty exciting rookie there at running back. Maybe he lights it up, but I cannot predict a whole lot until I see it happen for the Chargers. That's just one of those teams to where, if it happens, I'll move them up accordingly, but I am definitely not betting on the Chargers surprising people, at least, not right now. And then number 26 is going to be the Titans. And the Titans are another really tough one to pin down because, Will Levis, we haven't seen a lot of. It seems like he can be a long-term starter in the NFL, which I know is a big jump to say that since he's really only played in a fairly small sample size. But his arm strength was never in doubt. He's a tough runner. He is a leader, and I think he can be a leader on this team. And last year, the Titans were really not that great, and sure, maybe this year they're not going to be much better, but the opportunity is definitely there for if Levis happens to take a big step, he's got the weapons around him to actually make that jump. It's not going to have to depend solely on him. He's going to have some help. You have DeAndre Hopkins, you bring in Calvin Ridley, you bring in Tyler Boyd, you still have Tajay Spears there at backup running back, and you bring in Tony Pollard as well. So I don't want to say that this is a bad offense because I honestly think it has the opportunity to be a pretty good offense. But other than that, I'm not really excited about the Titans. I think if it happens, it'll be great, but there's still just a few things hold me back there on that team. Also, I think I forgot to talk about the defense for the Chargers. I just realized that. Defensively for the Titans, though, you bring in L'Jarius Sneed, huge move. It really is a huge move for them, and I think it's going to help them out a whole lot there. You still have Jeffrey Simmons as well. I think that you're at an unfortunate spot because you're kind of rebuilding / retooling, and the other teams in this division are now competing for first place and trying to just, go full win now mode. So it's the odds are stacked against them a little bit because just a couple of years ago this was wide open, and then now all of a sudden you're competing against the Texans, who are now very, very good, the Colts, who seem to be kind of on the rise, and could be even better if Anthony Richardson's pretty good. And then even the Jaguars trying to bounce back from last year too. Like they're all very solid teams in there. So it's a bit tougher on the Titans, but I think on their own they are a growing team that could be pretty exciting this year. And then to round out the bottom 8 teams, it's going to be the Broncos, who I can't even find for some reason. I'm probably staring right at them. Where are the okay, right there. I don't know, sure why I cannot find them. But yeah, Broncos are going to be number 25, kind of rounding out the bottom 8. Namely, the big thing here is Bo Nix, and I think that he definitely impressed me in preseason. I never want to read too into it. I was not very high on Bo Nix going into this year. He looked much more polished than I expected, I'm not going to lie. There's obviously a big jump from preseason to the actual, regular season football. And for Bo Nix, he does have some guys to work with. He has Courtland Sutton. You have Tim Patrick back and healthy. No, you cut him. Just kidding. You have Courtland Sutton. You draft Troy Franklin, who was Bo Nix's teammate in college. Not really sure what to make of him in year 1, to be honest. So he's just kind of a name, but I'm not really sure what to really think of him. Marvin Mims, the wide receiver 2, I think he could actually be pretty good this year. And from there, it's just like the plethora of running backs you have, as far as like Audric Estime and Javonte Williams and Jaleel McLaughlin. And I think Samaje Perine, or I think he left to go to the Chiefs. So still, 3 really good running backs. And I'm not sure what the dynamic of this offense is going to look like. You obviously want to see what you have in Bo Nix, but I don't think this team is going to be afraid to run the ball if that's what's working. Like, I think they'd probably at times rather run the ball with all the running backs they have. So I don't know. It'll be interesting. The Broncos are like the Commanders for me in the sense that they can definitely climb the ranks. Same with the Titans. I didn't say that, but the Titans as well, I think, can definitely climb the ranks. But yeah, so moving on from the bottom 8, number 24 is going to be the Raiders. And this is going to be a very interesting team to watch because you had Aiden O'Connell in, and then you bring in Gardner Minshew in free agency, and then Minshew wins the starting job. So now you have Gardner Minshew, you have Devontae Adams, you have Jacoby Myers, you draft Brock Bowers, who I think will be pretty good in year 1, and you have Zamir White there at running back. So you have an offense that is capable of being quite good, and to me, it really comes down to quarterback. That was a huge issue last year among the horrendous coaching that is now thankfully gone. But the quarterback position for the Raiders has still not quite been pinned down. And I do think it's a worry. But Gardner Minshew put together a pretty good season for the Colts last year to keep them competitive. I think he can do the same thing in Las Vegas. Defensively, you still have, Max Crosby. You bring in Christian Wilkins from Miami, which is a huge addition to that D-line. So you should have a very good defensive line at this point. Again, secondary can be a little sketchy, but I think the Raiders are going to compete more than they did last year for sure. I think Antonio Pierce is going to be a huge difference there for head coach for them. So I'm excited to see them. They could really go either way for me, though. I could see them falling in the ranks or climbing, but I think this is a relatively fair spot for them, at least for right now. And then number 23 is going to be the Cardinals, and it's funny because the Cardinals offense, I think, is going to be spectacular. I mean, I really think, and I've said this before, I think Kyler Murray is one of the most, overhated quarterbacks in the NFL. I think people tend to make the short jokes and the Call of Duty jokes and all this stuff, but Kyler Murray, when healthy, I think is one of the better dual-threat quarterbacks in the NFL, and I really do believe that. And now when you look at this offense, it looks much different than it did just a few years ago whenever they started 8-0. But it had a little bit of a downslide, the past year or so. But now looking at it, you have Marvin Harrison Jr., who should be a day 1 starter, wide receiver 1 instantly on this team. You have Michael Wilson, who is wide receiver 2, and he wasn't really talked about a lot last year, but he had a solid rookie year. And I don't think anyone cared because he was on the Cardinals, and the Cardinals were terrible, but he had a solid rookie year. So now you have him and Marvin Harrison Jr., pair that with Kyler, and you also have Trey McBride at tight end. I think this is actually going to be a pretty good offense. And you still have James Conner there at running back, and you draft Trey Benson. So there's actually a lot of weapons on this offense, and I'm really excited to see the dynamic for it. Kyler is now, over a year removed from that ACL tear, thankfully, so he should be a bit better now as well. The main concern, though, is that defense. It is a really, really bad defense. I mean, it could seriously be, the worst in the league. I think it will definitely be bottom 3. And I think that's what's going to hurt them in the long run this year. You'll be competitive in some games, but that defense, I don't think is going to get stops down the stretch. It's going to rely a lot on that offense trying to just outscore people at this point and just score every time they touch the ball. I think it'll be a good offense, maybe not that good, but I think the defense will definitely bring this team down a little bit. So they're at number 23. And then number 22 is going to be the Jaguars. And again, I think they had a bit of a regression year last year. You had Trevor Lawrence, who didn't look as good. Then he also hurts that ankle, and his numbers definitely declined a bit after that. People tended to, I think, really slander Trevor Lawrence a lot last year. And like, look, no, he didn't play well, but he did have an injury. The Jaguars led the league in like drop touchdowns, so it could have gone much differently. And I think, and I said this before, I think last season, that Calvin Ridley, adding him was a great move. I think it was a great move, but I don't think things worked as well with him in there. I really think Christian Kirk was better at wide receiver 1. And so now he is technically wide receiver 1 as of right now, but you draft Brian Thomas Jr., who can definitely overtake that wide receiver 1 role by the end of the year. So that's the thing. That's a little thing to watch there. You add Gabe Davis to this offense as well, and you saw Travis Etienne, Tank Bigsby there at running back. This offense has a very, very high ceiling. It depends on Trevor Lawrence producing, getting back to how he was playing when he was healthy in 2022, and we'll see what the Jaguars offense can do. Defensively, you add Eric Armstead to the D-line, which was, honestly, I think we have a dark horse team to land him, but that was a really nice move. You have Trevor Walker now going into year 3, who you're expecting can take another step this year. I think the Jaguars can be a good team this year, but again, I'm kind of in between on them, which is why they're ranked where they are. And then number 21 is going to be the Buccaneers. So Baker Mayfield, I think, surprised a lot of people last year, including myself. I like Baker Mayfield a lot. I just didn't think he'd be very good last year, but he was. He did a great job of distributing the ball to guys like Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and Trey Palmer. So now you have basically the same situation, except different coaching, different offensive coordinator in there. Might look a little bit different, but I'm not really worried about that, to be honest. When you have guys like Mike Evans, who's just, Mr. Consistent at this point, 1,000 yards every single year. Chris Godwin this year playing out of the slot, who I think is, I believe he is statistically more productive when playing out of the slot. So you have him. Trey Palmer still, you drive Jalen McMillan, and you also have Rachaad White at running back. So I think this offense can be really, really good. I think it's going to be a very competitive team in the NFC South. And then defensively, I think this team, I don't want to say is going to be outmatched, but it's going to rely a lot on guys like Antoine Winfield, who's one of the better safeties in the entire NFL. But when you have someone that good, and you have like Jamel Dean, and then you have Vita Vea, it's a little light at some positions there. There's not a lot of depth. You have Kalijah Kancey going into year 2. Hopefully he can take a big step for them. I don't think the Buccaneers are going to be a bad team. I think they're going to be pretty much in the middle of the road, which is about what this reflects. Not quite, but, around that range. And then number 20 is going to be the Steelers, and this team is so hard for me to rank. This really was one of the hardest teams for me. Obviously, week 1, you have Russell Wilson starting, and I don't know how long that's going to last for. I really think he's going to have a shorter leash than what might be thought for him, because the Steelers aren't paying him any money. They're paying like $1 million. If he goes out there and sucks for the first 5 weeks and almost tanks this season, there's nothing stopping them from just taking him out of the game and putting Fields in there. It's a younger guy with a higher ceiling, and you're not losing a ton by taking Russell Wilson out because you're not paying him anything. So that'll be interesting to see how that quarterback dynamic goes this year. I think even if Wilson is a long-term starter on this team, there will still be packages where Fields is used. But yeah, other than that, Najee Harris, Jalen Warren, you have George Pickens. Unfortunately, not Brandon Ayuk. I think we were all kind of hoping maybe he would go there, other than 49ers fans, I guess. But yeah, not him. You saw George Pickens. You draft Roman Wilson there, wide receiver, Pat Freiermuth. I think the Steelers can be a very, very good team. That defense, obviously, it's the Steelers' defense. There's not a lot to really say about it. Got T.J. Watt, Minka Fitzpatrick, Joey Porter Jr. going into year 2. It's a very, very good defense. But again, the offensive struggles are going to really determine how good this team is. Are they going to struggle a lot? Is it going to weigh the team down again like last year? Or is it going to be much more fluid to where it's more of a complete team this year? I don't really know, and that's why they're ranked 20, to be honest. And then number 19 is going to be the Colts. And the Colts, I think, could be a great team, but it really just depends on Anthony Richardson. And I think he's going to be great. I've said this before, I think he is going to be really, really good. But at the end of the day, we haven't seen a whole lot. We haven't seen a big enough sample size. And I really wanted to pick the Colts to upset in week 1. Spoiler alert for my pick video tomorrow. I'm not picking them. I really don't think Richardson's going to start the year off hot. I think it might take a little bit of adjusting because he hasn't played in the NFL that much. And again, if everything goes right, though, looking at this offense, I mean, you have Jonathan Taylor, you have Michael Pittman Jr., you have Josh Downs now going to year 2, you draft A.D. Mitchell, you still have Alec Pierce there for some depth. this is a really good offense. It's capable of being a very, very good offense. It literally just depends on the ceiling of Anthony Richardson this year, of what he can actually do. Because he has all the physical attributes to be one of, if not the best dual threat quarterback in the entire NFL. Okay, not best. Lamar's probably going to be better regardless. But he has all the tools to potentially be that, to be one of the best dual threat quarterbacks in the NFL. But I don't know if he's going to get there, to be honest. And that's why I have them ranked lower than maybe some people might have them at. So that's why they're there. Again, maybe you could have them higher. Defensively, they have Laiatu Latu, who is my favorite edge rusher in the entire draft. I'm hoping to see a lot from him in year one. Not sure what we will really see from him, but you have him. Hopefully he can have a good year one. You have Zaire Franklin still there at linebacker too, who I think was ranked like 100th on the NFL 100 players. Like, that's kind of cool, I guess. But yeah, so the Colts, I think, are a well-rounded team. Offensive ceiling is very, very high, definitely higher than the defensive ceiling, but it depends on Richardson. So that's why I don't have them as high as some people might. And then at number 18 is going to be the Vikings. And it feels weird having them this low, but let's start in the offense, okay? Obviously, the big thing, JJ McCarthy out for the entire year, absolutely sucks. I'd probably had them a little bit higher on here if he was starting, but he's not. You have Sam Darnold in there, and being a Panthers fan, I got to watch a lot of Sam Darnold, and I don't really know what to expect, because on the one hand, speaking from my experience watching him, he's not good, and I think that's most people's experience watching him. Sam Darnold's not a good quarterback, but if you really want to give him a ton of grace and a ton of leeway, he has not had a situation this good in his entire career. He just hasn't. He hasn't had a Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, Aaron Jones, Kevin O'Connell head coach type situation in his entire career. He hasn't had it. He was in Carolina with Matt Rule, who is a horrendous head coach. He was in New York with the Jets when they were not very good at all. They didn't have a lot around. They had like Robbie Anderson at the time, or whatever his name is now, Robbie Chosen, I think. So I think that, yes, I understand why some people might be pretty hopeful. Maybe he can turn around. And I wouldn't say that's off the table. I just think that I'm going to go with the Sam Darnold we've seen the most. I think we've seen all that Sam Darnold is. Maybe he'll be better than what he has been, but that might not mean good. So I think he's going to hold this team back a little bit, unfortunately. Defensively, you are incredibly thin at corner. You signed Stephon Gilmore. I think Gilmore still has some good football left in him. I love that signing. I honestly wanted Carolina to sign him. That's a good signing. You have him. You have Byron Murphy, but you do not have much else there at all. That is a very weak secondary. I don't like to throw that word around, but it's a pretty weak secondary. D-line, you draft Dallas Turner. I think that's actually really, really exciting. You have Jonathan Greenard in there after losing Danielle Hunter, and you still have Harrison Phillips. So you have a good D-line. You have a very lackluster and thin secondary with a offense that has potential to be really, really good, but I don't think it will be. So it's hard to rank this team. I put them there at 18. Maybe you could have them a little bit higher. If everything goes right, they can definitely climb the ranks, but I am just not a believer in Sam Darnold. And then next, at number 17, is going to be the Seahawks. And I think the Seahawks are, actually, no, let me rephrase that. I think the Seahawks have been one of the most forgettable teams for, I think, everyone but Seahawks fans this past offseason. I don't mean that as in this team is bad. I just think people have kind of forgot about how good the Seahawks would be. They're a pretty good team, and I don't think they get a lot of media attention for some reason. And, maybe it's because they don't have like a star quarterback or something like that, but the Seahawks are very well-rounded. You have Geno Smith, you have DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, you have Jackson Smith and Jigba going into year 2 now, who you want to see a bit of a step from this year. You have Kenneth Walker still there at running back with Zach Charbonnet at running back 2. And I think Noah Fant still there at tight end. So you have a pretty good offense, and it doesn't get a lot of attention. But the Seahawks offense, very, very solid. Defensively, you re-signed Leonard Williams, so that was a great re-signing after acquiring him, I believe, mid-year last year. Maybe it was the year prior, but I believe it was last year. Then you still have Tariq Woolen. I think he changed his name to Riq Woolen, so I guess you still have Riq Woolen. And again, you have Devin Witherspoon now, too, going into year 2. So I think the Seahawks can be a really good team. It's just not talked about a whole lot. I think they are, again, barely in the bottom half for me. This team can definitely move up because I think it will surprise some people because it hasn't been talked about enough. You bring in Mike McDonald at head coach. Like, you made a lot of nice changes this offseason. I don't think they got a whole lot of credit for it. So Seahawks, they're at 17, but definitely watch them as a team to really move up. And then there at number 16 is going to be the Bears. And I know That is very high up for a team that is being led by a rookie quarterback. But I gotta say, I'm all in on the Bears. So if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I am all in on the Bears. You have such a well-built roster to where you really did just have to plug in the quarterback and play. And it's funny because the Panthers GM Scott Fitterer, who is now fired and probably on the couch just like I am, he last year said the Panthers roster was built that exact same way. They just had to plug in Bryce Young, which was so wildly inaccurate. But that aside, the Bears, though, I think it has that roster that he was trying to sell as the Panthers last year. The Bears have a very well-built offense. You have DJ Moore, who you got in that trade from Carolina, which I'm not even going to go into. You have Keenan Allen, who you signed this past offseason. And then you have a young wide receiver to get to sit under them, being Rome Odunze. And then tight end, you still have Cole Kmet and Gerald Everett. Running back, you have DeAndre Swift, and you still have Khalil Herbert, I think, still back there. I think Rashawn Johnson's still back there. So you really do just need the quarterback to be plugged in. And you get Caleb Williams to be that quarterback. And one thing I do want to say, though, is I think some people have compared him to Mahomes and having this league-altering year one. I'm not saying that can't happen. In my opinion, I don't think that will happen, at least in year one. But I think the other thing, too, is there is this huge expectations now on the Bears to be, this crazy good team because of Caleb Williams. When in reality, because this offense is built so well, Caleb Williams does not have to be a superstar. He literally just has to be an average to good quarterback, and it'll be a very productive offense. I mean, this is one of the better situations, at least that I can remember, for a rookie quarterback in a very long time. So I don't get that totally. He doesn't have to be a superstar. Sure, we want him to be, but if he can just be solid, the Bears offense is going to be super productive and very hard to stop. And then defensively, you have Jalen Johnson, who's probably a top 5 corner in the NFL at this point, who I don't think always gets the recognition for that. You have Montez Sweat in the D-line. You do, I'm not going to lie, the D-line's a little sketchy. And whenever I was looking over this team, that was one thing that kind of stuck out to me was Montez Sweat's there. Not a whole lot else. I don't want to discredit everyone there, but it's definitely a weak point in this team. Regardless, though, I think the Bears are going to be very good. I had them starting out with a rookie quarterback in the top half of the league. Hopefully, they don't embarrass me, but they're number 16. And then they're at 15 is going to be the Falcons, and I'm going to be honest, I absolutely hate the Falcons, but I think they'll be very good this year. And I think it's very similar to Pittsburgh in that the Falcons offense was just held back from poor quarterback play. I mean, Desmond Ridder and Arthur Smith just tanked what this offense could have been. I mean, you have Drake London, Kyle Pitts. Well, I guess they didn't last year have everyone else about to name. But still, last year you had Drake London, you had Kyle Pitts, you had Bijan Robinson, and Tyler Algier. And how that offense was not in the upper half in scoring almost 25 points a game, I have no idea. Because seriously, I'm exaggerating a little bit. But seriously, it was held back so much. Now you have Kirk Cousins in there, and you still have Drake London. You have Kyle Pitts. You add Darnell Mooney to that offense now as well. Bijan Robinson, of course, still there, and Tyler Algier. This offense, I think, is going to be really good. I'm hoping Kirk comes back healthy from that Achilles tear. That's the only thing that scares me, is Kirk not being on that level he was previously. So hopefully everything goes to plan, because if it does, this is going to be a really good offense. And then defensively, you trade for Matthew Judon a couple weeks ago, which really pissed me off. You have Jesse Bates, who you signed last year, which was a great signing for them. The Falcons, I think, are one of the more well-rounded, I think one of the most well-rounded teams in the NFL, from offense and defense, all very well-rounded. AJ Terrell still back there in that secondary as well. You knew you had a weak spot at D-line. You went and got Matthew Judon. I mean, you did what you're supposed to do, just going and winning now. But I would be lying if I said I didn't hope they completely disappointed. Number 14 is going to be the Bills, and the Bills, I think, are another one people are really split on. Some people still have them top 5. Some people have them really low. I think I'm probably in the layer of people that have them lower than others might like. But something I've said before, I did this in my AFC East prediction video, so if you didn't see that, go check that out. But I think to say that there is not going to be a loss of production, or at least a difference in the Bills' offense after losing Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis is just, I think it's just not true. But it's not impossible to replace Gabe Davis' production. He's a solid receiver. He's not much more than that. Stephon Diggs, yeah, that's a true wide receiver 1. Yeah, he was a bit inconsistent last year, but it's still it's a hole on that offense. But then you bring in Curtis Samuel, you still have Khalil Shakir. I don't think it's being talked about enough, to be honest. You have Keon Coleman, who you draft. You have Dalton Kincaid still there. And you have Josh Allen at quarterback with James Cook there, Jeffrey Davis. This is still a very good offense. And I think it's getting disrespected just a little bit because they lost two good receivers who are great. I don't want to try and diminish that. But to say they just haven't done anything, this offense is going to be lackluster, I don't think it's accurate. I think Josh Allen is the type of quarterback that can elevate the talent around him. Are these the best receivers in the world? No, but they are playmakers. Khalil Shakir is a playmaker. Curtis Samuel is a playmaker. James Cook is a playmaker after the catch. This offense is going to be good. It's going to be hard to stop. They might not be Super Bowl contenders, but it's going to be a good offense. And then defensively, you have Von Miller, who I'm not sure what to expect from him at this point in his career, but I still, he's a big name. You got to at least throw him in there. You lose Matt Milano for the whole year, which really, really sucks. Or at least I think close to the whole year, so that's really unfortunate. You have Greg Rousseau there still on the defensive line. DeMar Hamlin's actually starting back there, free safety. You have Taylor Rapp still back there in the secondary. So you have a good defense. You have a, I think, great offense. I wouldn't say amazing, but you have a great offense. The Bills are going to be very, very good. I'm not going to put them top 10 quite yet, but I think I think saying the Bills are going to, be very bad this year, I think is almost, wishful thinking. I don't think they're going to be bad. They might not be great, but they're not going to be bad. The next up, I actually have the Rams here, and I think the Rams are going to be a really good offense. I mean, you have Matthew Stafford, Puka Nacua now going to year 2, Cooper Kupp hopefully back and healthy. You have Kyren Williams. You draft Blake Corum for backup running back. Jordan Whittington is a rookie wide receiver for them who went off in preseason. Just a name, just a guy to watch just in case, because it happened last year with Puka Nacua, so just watch him just in case. This year for the Rams, Tutu Atwell still there for depth at wide receiver. I think the Rams offense is going to be very, very exciting. Defensively, it's tough. You lose one of the best defensive players of all time with Aaron Donald. So you draft, Jared Verse. You draft actually his college teammate Braden Fiske. So for D-line, you got to try and make it for that loss of production. It's just not possible. It's one of the best players of all time. It's just not possible to make up for that loss of production there. But again, you got to retool somehow. So at least they're trying there. I think the Rams are going to be very competitive. I was really sleeping on them this time last year. I've learned my lesson. I think they're going to be quite good. I'm not going to say top of the league, but they're going to be very, very competitive. Then next I have the Packers, and I think the Packers have a very high ceiling. I'm not going to quite put them over some of the teams I have over them, obviously. I think they can definitely pass them, though, in the ranks. The Packers, I just want to see more of. That's the only thing holding me back is they were great last year. Jordan Love was very, very good, especially to end the season. Super young offense with a ton of young playmakers. But I need to see it done more than what I've seen it. It's a relatively small sample size. If they come out this year firing, they're going to climb the ranks for me. I think the Packers have a really, really high-powered team. I think they can be really, really good. So you have Jordan Love there, of course. You have Josh Jacobs, you bring in free agency. You have A.J. Dillon at backup. You draft Marshawn Lloyd. Jaden Reed's there at wide receiver. Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Latavian Wicks. Luke Musgrave there at tight end. I mean, you have a loaded offense. Defensively, you definitely had a few holes there. I think they've addressed them well. You still have Quay Walker. You bring in Xavier McKinney for free safety. That's the biggest thing for me. Safety was a huge issue last year for them. And you bring in McKinney from New York. I think it was a great addition. One of my favorites that they did all offseason, to be honest. You still have Jair Alexander still there, of course, at cornerback. So Packers, really, really good team. They're number 11. So now getting to the top 10 for the start of the season. Number 10 is going to be the Browns. And I'm not going to go super, super in depth because I've tried to keep this video relatively, brief for each team. But like I've said before in the past, I am out on Deshaun Watson. I don't think the player he is now is the player the Browns drafted. I think that Deshaun Watson is gone. I think whether it was from all the off-the-field stuff and maybe maybe it was the mental aspect of having to try and play when all that's going on in the back of your mind. Maybe it was literally just sitting out for a year and you just fell behind, couldn't get back into a rhythm. Whatever it is, he is not good as of right now. And I'm not saying he can't be good again. I personally don't think so. It's definitely possible. And just in my opinion, I don't think he will be. But he just has not been good. Since getting to Cleveland, he's been a bad quarterback. I mean, bad would be a little harsh, but he's been a below average quarterback. He has not read the field well. He has not made good reads. He has not thrown the ball at a high level. I mean, he was a great passer in Houston. The only thing he's done well, in my opinion, is extended plays. He's been able to really extend plays very, very well, break tackles. Even if the play doesn't amount to anything, he's been able to buy time for his receivers to get open very, very well. But other than that, it's just not the guy you traded for. You gave a whole lot to get him. I understand that. But this year is truly a make or break year for Deshaun Watson's career, in my opinion. Because if he's bad, we just saw what the Browns could do last year with an old Joe Flacco. If they can't get to a similar level with Deshaun Watson, you got to cut your losses. Get him out of there. This is a really good team who it'd be really sad if we allow poor quarterback play to hold them back. Other than Watson, though, Nick Chubb out for at least the first 4 games. When healthy, it's one of the best running backs in the entire NFL. Will he get back to that point? I don't really know. I really hope so, though. Jerome Ford still there at running back. You have Amari Cooper there at wide receiver. You still have David Njoku there at tight end. You have Jerry Jeudy you bring in from Denver wide receiver. And you also have Elijah Moore there at wide receiver, too. So you have a lot of weapons. Defensively, this is probably the best defense in the entire NFL. I mean, you have Myles Garrett. You have Martin Emerson. You have Denzel Ward. You have Greg Newsome. I mean, you have everything you could want. I mean, all over the team. You have good linebackers. You have a great secondary. You have a phenomenal defensive line with Myles Garrett. And you have the other guy, this is Darius Smith. So you have a very, very good team. If it's held back by Deshaun Watson, I'm going to be a little pissed off. I'm not going to lie. Browns, though, number 10. And then number 9, this might be a little low for them. I'm not going to lie. That might be a little low. But I do have the Dolphins next at number 9. And this is absolutely a team that can climb the ranks. Last year, to end the year, they really just kind of got unlucky with injuries. They had a lot of injuries pile up, especially on defense. But now going to this year, hopefully everybody's healthy. You still have Tyreek Hill, one of, if not the best player in the entire NFL. I mean, in my opinion, it's a top 2 receiver between him and Jefferson. But you can make a case that Tyreek Hill is the best player in the entire NFL, at least in my opinion. But you have Hill, you have Jalen Waddle. You bring in Odell, who I love Odell. He's just not great at this point in his career. He's just not, unfortunately. Devon Achane back there at running back. Raheem Moser back there at running back. You draft Jalen Wright there. You still have Tua. Again, really, really loaded offense. Really excited to see what happens. Defensively, Jalen Phillips recovering from that Achilles. I think he's ready to go. Who's definitely a player to watch for them. Jalen Ramsey, I don't think played at the highest level of his career last year. I think while older, is still a great corner. I think he'll be better this year. Again, the Dolphins, really good team. Maybe I have them too low now that I'm looking at it. I don't know. Either way, again, we're doing this list every single week. These ranks are going to continuously change literally every week. But yeah, Dolphins there at number 9. Okay, not going to lie, I made a mistake. I skipped over a team on accident. In between the Bills and the Rams, actually the Cowboys. This is one that I think is definitely further down than a lot of people would have them. I love CeeDee Lamb. I think Dak's a great quarterback, at least in the regular season. I think Jake Ferguson's a great tight end, but their running back room is horrible. I mean, you have Dalvin Cook, Zeke, you have Rico Dowdle, I guess. But, Dalvin Cook and Zeke, really? Those are two, great players looking at their entire career. But, 2024, I don't know about that one. Very, very bad running back room. Defensively, obviously phenomenal. But the lack of, I think, just how dynamic this offense can be really holds me back. I think it's Dak and CeeDee against the world on offense, to be honest with you. So that's why they're further down. Again, I assume the Cowboys will move up, but I'm not as high on them this year as I was last year, to be honest with you. Now moving in to the top 8. So number 8 is going to be the Texans. I had them very high up here. I understand realistically they're probably below the Dolphins and the Browns, but I've been very high on them all offseason. I wanted to be consistent with what I've said, so that's why I had them there at number 8. I think CJ Stroud is going to take another huge step this year. You have Nico Collins still, you add Stephon Diggs, you have Tank Dell there at wide receiver. I mean, you have a really, really deep wide receiver room, to be honest. I mean, you have Noah Brown, you have John Mechie there at backup, you have Robert Woods. You have a very, very deep wide receiver room. You have Dalton Schultz still there at tight end, too. I think Brevin Jordan's still back there at tight end, too. I mean, you have a loaded offense. Defensively, I think it's going to be maybe not just as good, but still really, really good. You add Danielle Hunter. You have, I always almost say Devin Singletary, and that's not his name. His name is Derek Stingley. You have Derek Stingley there at corner, who I think will be even better this year. I think he took a step last year when he was actually healthy. I think he'll be even better this year. Kamari Lassiter is a guy to watch who you drafted in the later rounds. I think round 3, if I'm not mistaken. Round 3 or 4, I think. But again, definitely somebody to watch for them. Jalen Petrie, I mean, look, you have a lot of talent in this roster. It's really just win now mode. Out of nowhere, but it is really just win now mode for the Texans. Very excited for him. Very high on this team. They're number 8. And then number 7 is going to be the Bengals. And the Bengals, I think they have such a high ceiling. But it starts and it ends with Joe Burrow's health. And I've said this probably 50 times this past offseason when talking about this team. If Joe Burrow is not healthy, this team will not amount to anything. It's really that simple. You have to protect him. And I think the Bengals have done that. They added Orlando Brown last year. Now this year, they added Trent Brown. You drafted Marius Mims. You still have Ted Karras there, too. So, like, you have I think you have a good offensive line now. But it has to do its job. If it doesn't do its job, if Burrow goes down again, first off, there's going to be discussions about Joe Burrow. Because the best ability is availability. And if he's not available, sure, he's a great quarterback. But if he's not playing, what's the point? You know what I mean? So, if he gets hurt again, I think, for, like, an extensive period of time, not, like, 1 week. If he gets hurt for, like, 8 weeks, I think there's definitely going to be discussions about him, unfortunately, with his health. But other than that, I mean, if everything goes to plan, you have, I think, a much improved offensive line. You have Joe Burrow, who I think, when healthy, is a top 3 to 5 quarterback in the entire NFL. You have Zach Moss, you bring in at running back. You have Chase Brown now in year 2 at running back. You have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, who I think is one of the best wide receiver duos in the entire NFL. You have Jermaine Burton there, who you draft from Alabama. You have Andre Yoshivas, I think, if I said that correctly, there at wide receiver. Tight, you even have Mike Gesicki. Like, this is a really, really good offense with a super high ceiling, but Burrow has to be healthy. Defensively, you have a pretty good defensive line with Trey Hendrickson and Sam Hubbard. You lose DJ Reader, which definitely sucks, but again, it's still a solid D-line. Dax Hill moving from safety to corner this year for the Bengals. And another guy to watch that I've said, I think even last year, Cameron Taylor-Britt does not get the respect he deserves. He is a very, very good corner. Definitely watch him take another bigger step this year there in the secondary for him. Mike Hilton's still there. It's a really good football team. That's why I'm high on him, because as of right now, everybody's healthy. If Burrow's not healthy, this team is dropping in my ranks. But if Burrow can stay healthy, the Bengals' ceiling is so, so high. And I said before that I was really all in on the Bears. I'm also all in on the Jets. They are number 6 for me. Again, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I think Aaron Rodgers comes back. I think he looks really good. I think just a good quarterback is what this team needs. You don't need a top 5 quarterback. You just need someone to consistently get Garrett Wilson the ball at a high level, and your offense will already be way better. Garrett Wilson had 3 touchdowns last year, which is horrible. Garrett Wilson is way better than a 3-touchdown wide receiver. So I think that'll be much improved this year with Rodgers in there if he can stay healthy. You have Mike Williams recovering from his ACL tear, but when healthy, he's one of the better jump ball receivers in the NFL, in my opinion. I think he isn't talked about enough. Malachi Corley you draft there. And then you have Breece Hall, who, again, phenomenal running back, can do it all. Rushing game, receiving game. Defensively, you still have Sauce Gardner. You have Quinnen Williams. You have Jermaine Johnson there, the D-line, too. I mean, this is a really, really good team. I'm going to say that for probably the next however many teams I'm going to have to cover. 5 more teams, because it's the top of the list. These are all really good football teams. The Jets, I will say, it's like one wrong move, and this team could drop like 15 ranks. Like, if just one big injury happens, it could really fall apart. I really hope it doesn't happen. Last year, I was really excited for the Jets and Aaron Rodgers. I'm not going to lie. Like, that was one of my more anticipated teams, other than my own favorite team being the Panthers, because I was excited for Bryce Young, which, yeah, we know how that went. But I was also really excited for Rodgers on the Jets, and I was very deflated when he got hurt last year. I'm not going to lie. I was really, really deflated, and I wasn't even a Jets fan. So I hope everything go to plan this year. I'm really excited for it. Jets there at number 6. Then there at number 5 is going to be the Lions. This is also one that I might have too low, which is crazy. Saying about the Lions, I have them at 5th in the NFL, and I feel like they might be a little bit too low on them. The Lions are a phenomenal team. They really, really are. Jared Goff does a great job of running that offense. Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think one of the more consistent receivers that plays at a super high level. You have him, Jameson Williams, hopefully taking a step this year. You still have David Montgomery. You have Jahmyr Gibbs in that running back room, which is a really nice running back room at that. Sam Laporta now going into year 2 at tight end. You have Penny Sewell there at Penny Sewell there at offensive line, who, again, is one of the better tackles in the NFL. So it's such a well-rounded offense. Defensively, that was probably their weakness, I think, the past couple years, where they just weren't quite there yet. I think they are definitely there this year. I mean, Aiden Hutchinson now going to year 3 or 4, I think 3. You have him. You bring in DJ Reader from Cincinnati, who, if he can recover fully from that torn quad, he will be very, very good for them. You have Jack Campbell there at linebacker in his second year. Brian Branch in his second year, and then the big thing you needed was corner, and you drafted Terran Arnold out of Alabama, first round. He's my pick to win Defensive Rookie of the Year. I went with a little bit of a dark horse there. I don't think a ton of people are picking that, but he is my pick to win Defensive Rookie of the Year. I think he's going to be phenomenal. You had your team need. You went out and you got, in my opinion, an elite player at that position, first round of the draft, day one starter. I love it. I love the Lions. You can make a case for them being a top 3 team as of right now. I have them top 5. You can make a case for top 3. And then number 4 is going to be the Ravens. This is another team that I think it's easy to not discredit them, but just kind of put some other teams above them, like the Jets, because, it's like Rodgers is back and healthy, but the Ravens were phenomenal last year, and not a whole lot really changed, in my opinion. I mean, you still have Lamar Jackson coming off an MVP season. You add Derrick Henry to the mix. I mean, you have... And I will say, the lack of receiver depth is a little concerning. You have Zay Flowers, who I think is awesome. You have Rashad Bateman, who it's really probably his last chance to make a statement, or else he's not going to be on a starting NFL roster. You have Nelson Aguilar. You have Devontae Walker, the rookie, who is definitely a guy to watch. Mark Andrews, one of the best ends in football when healthy. So, again, phenomenal offense. Really, really good offense. Defensively, not a whole lot worse. You might be even better, to be honest. You have Kyle Hamilton, who is one of my favorite players in that Ravens defense. Actually, I think he is. I'm just going to say that now, because I think I've said that in past videos that, I'm super high on this dude. I think he doesn't get the recognition he deserves. Kyle Hamilton is probably my favorite player in that Ravens defense. I think he is just awesome. Does so many things well. Does not get the recognition and the media attention I think he really deserves for playing at the level he plays. You have Roquan Smith. Yeah, you lose Patrick Queen. It sucks. It's not the end of the world, to be honest. You lose to David Clowney. Again, not the end of the world. I think this team is going to be good. You lost Geno Stone. Sucks. You would rather not lose your free safety who led your team in interceptions last year. But this defense, I don't think it's going anywhere. You draft Nate Wiggins, who was arguably the best man corner in the draft last year. I think the Ravens are a great team. That's why they're at number 4. And then number 3, I have the Eagles. And this is another team that, again, like the Texans, like the Bears, like the Jets, that I'm kind of all in on. I've been very high on them all offseason. I thought last year was a bit of an anomaly as far as the level of play. It just imploded. It was I don't throw this word around a lot, but they were kind of frauds for basically the entire year. And then when everything went to crap, it really, really exploded up. It imploded. It exploded in their face. Pause, I guess. So you have Jalen Hurts, who I think will be playing at a better level this year. You have A.J. Brown, who was one of the best receivers in football, probably top 5 in my opinion. Devontae Smith, who is probably the best wide receiver 2 in football. You also add Jahan Dotson, which I think is interesting, from the Commanders. Look, I thought Dotson, I said probably multiple times, that he was very underwhelming in Washington, but I didn't think he was, traded to a division rival, underwhelming. So, I don't know. You have him there. You add Saquon Barkley, which I think is an amazing move. Saquon can do it all in the rushing game, receiving game, and now he gets to be in an offense with Kellen Moore as offensive coordinator. I think it's going to be a very, very good offense. Defensively, you have Jalen Carter now going into year 2. You draft Quinion Mitchell there in the secondary, Cooper DeJean back there in the secondary, doing all you can to keep James Bradberry off the field. But yes, I think the Eagles are a phenomenal team. I'm very high on them. I had them there at number 3. Number 2 is going to be the Kansas City Chiefs, and number 1 is going to be the 49ers. The Chiefs, on paper, they don't look like they are better than the Eagles or the Ravens or the Lions. You could probably have the Chiefs down at number 7 or 8 or 9, looking at it on paper. But the Andy Reid, magic, I don't know what to call it, but just the way this offense is ran, it's really fun to watch when you're not just hating on Patrick Mahomes the whole time. Mahomes is the best quarterback in football. And now you have a much better receiving core this year. Last year it was terrible. This year now you have Xavier Worthy in there. I think it'll be very exciting in his first year. Hollywood Brown, Rashee Rice. You got some playmakers. You got a lot of speed. You got some playmakers. I think it's definitely improved from last year. Isaiah Pacheco, I think, is an awesome running back. You still have him too. And of course, Travis Kelce. And then defensively, Trent McDuffie, I think, is phenomenal. I don't think he gets the recognition he deserves either, but you have Chris Jones, who definitely gets the recognition he deserves. One of the best defensive tackles in all of football. Chiefs defense really, I'm not going to say carried them last year, but it kind of carried them last year. I'm not going to lie. They're number 2. 49ers number one. I mean, 49ers have one of the most loaded rosters in all of football. Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, re-signed Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, Brock Purdy. Trent Williams now is even ending off his holdout, so he's coming back. Then defensively, you have like Fred Warner, Talanoa Hufanga coming back from his torn ACL. You have Nick Bosa. It's just an amazing team. So they're the number one. These are my week one power rankings as of right now. This video will be every single week until the season is over. We'll be moving all these teams around based on how they play. So thanks for watching. I do really appreciate it. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, subscribe. I would really appreciate that. It is free. It takes just 1 second. On the road to 1,000 subscribers, closing in on 700. So thanks for all the support there. I do really appreciate it. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.